The call center hummed with a low synthetic rhythm clicks of keyboards, distant voices bouncing off cubicle walls, the occasional sigh muffled behind cheap fabric dividers. In a back corner, where the fluorescent lights flickered just a little, more than they should, sat Layla Mansour, headset, gently cupping her curls, spine straight, eyes closed for one breath before she picked up the next call. Marhaban, ismi Layla Kaif, yum kanuni musadadak. Hello, my name is Layla. How can I help you today? Her voice, soft, deliberate, edged with empathy, immediately slowed the caller's panic. On the other end, a man in Amman struggled with a failed software install, his frustration heightened by poor translation in previous support emails. Layla listened, clarified, and without condescension, walked him through the fix. He thanked her 5 times. She hung up, logged the ticket, and took a sip of tea gone cold. No one clapped. No supervisor smiled. The team leader 2 desks down gave her a distracted nod without looking up from his screen. Just another box ticked. Another fire quietly extinguished. That was every day. 60% of the company's Middle Eastern business flowed through Layla's headset. She spoke Arabic, English, and enough technical jargon to bridge continents. Clients asked for her by name. Some even sent handwritten letters in thanks. But within the walls of Vectora Solutions, she was a file number in payroll and a name mispronounced at team lunches. It's Layla, right? Someone asked last week. It's Layla, she replied, gently. Oh, sorry, like that song, right? She smiled thinly. Sure. She didn't expect gratitude. But some days, the invisibility felt heavier than exhaustion. She noticed it in small ways. When quarterly meetings were held and she was left off the invite. When clients praised your Arabic rep but no one forwarded the compliment. When she was the only one staying late to handle calls that came in after 6 p.m. because no one else speaks it. Layla, you're just so good at this stuff. She was good, and that made it worse. Back in college, she dreamed of working in cross-cultural relations, helping global teams communicate. Her professors had called her a natural bridge builder, but the entry-level job she took out of necessity had become a 4-year plateau. A place where promotions passed her by like elevator doors closing before she reached them. Still, she carried herself with quiet pride. Her desk was neat, her reports were spotless. On breaks, she called her mother, who asked in Arabic if they were treating her right. She always said yes. But truthfully, she wasn't sure anyone even knew what she really did. Upstairs, in the C-suite floors with their polished, glass and soundproofed walls, the executives had never once spoken to her. Not once. Her badge got her through security, but not into their awareness. The irony was bitter. The clients they praised for their loyalty, the markets they celebrated in quarterly reviews, those voices were reaching them only through hers. And yet, she was just the girl in the headset. Still, Layla kept speaking, kept translating, kept soothing anxious voices thousands of miles away, one call at a time. She found dignity in precision, comfort in clarity, power in language they never thought to value. And on the day the CEO would finally walk into the building, past her cubicle without ever asking her name, she would be right there, headset on, tea gone cold, solving everything. The day after the CEO's visit, things went back to normal. Layla logged in early, as always. Already halfway through a hot cup of cardamom coffee, she skimmed client updates, adjusted her headset, and began the ritual agentum voice. Careful notes, clear answers. But the undercurrent had started to shift. The first time it happened, she was in the weekly department sync. Layla had suggested a change to the email templates for Arabic-speaking clients, pointing out a mistranslation that could lead to confusion. The virtual room went quiet for half a second. Then Colleen, the new team manager, spoke up. Let's just keep it simple. For now, she said, her smile-tight eyes locked on the screen. Not everyone here speaks ... whatever. The others chuckled softly. Layla muted her mic. It would have been easier to forget if it had only happened once. But in the weeks that followed, Colleen's jabs became more casual, more public. Let Layla handle it. She's fluent in sand language. Or, say that name again. I swear, every time it's different. Layla laughed once, quietly, to keep the room from growing colder. She told herself, it wasn't worth the fight. Still, something lodged inside her like grit under a contact lens. At first, she tried to frame it as generational cluelessness. Colleen was new, fast-talking, fresh out of some leadership program. Maybe she just hadn't worked with anyone like Layla before. But then the performance reviews came. Layla's metrics were perfect response times, satisfaction scores, call resolution. Yet her evaluation read, lacks initiative, too quiet in team settings. Doesn't contribute to culture? She stared at it for a full minute. Is this a mistake? She asked during her 1-on-1. Colleen smiled. No, it's accurate. You're reliable, but you don't really engage, you know. Layla tried to speak, but Colleen had already shifted the tab to the next person's dashboard. Later that afternoon, while refilling her tea, Layla overheard two coworkers near the water cooler. She's nice, just ... kinda hard to read. Yeah, and her name's like, what is it again? Lila. Layla, right? Foreign names are so hard. Layla stepped back before they saw her. Her hands trembled slightly, the paper cup threatening to fold in her grip. It was subtle. Always subtle, no slurs, no open threats. Just discomfort wrapped in courtesy. Praise withheld. Visibility denied. Bias dressed as banter. When she brought it up to HR, the response was chilling in its civility. We appreciate you bringing this to us. We'll take it under consideration. Nothing changed. She began eating lunch alone. By the second month under Colleen's management, she was passed over for a project she'd essentially built. When she asked why, the response was gentle, firm. We're looking for someone who understands the client experience in a broader sense. Layla blinked. She was the client experience, but she didn't say it out loud. Instead, she sat at her desk, tea cooling beside her, and translated an irate voicemail from a Saudi business client flawlessly. Again, upstairs, the executives applauded themselves for global reach. Down here, Layla bit her tongue, just to keep her job. But something inside her was shifting, slowly, quietly. The next time someone whispered her name near the water cooler, she listened. And this time, she remembered every word. She had stopped flinching at the whispers. After weeks of being shrugged off and spoken over, Layla moved through the office like a ghost in daylight, present, productive, and unseen. The only thing grounding her was the voice on the other end of the line. The people who needed her, who knew her name without ever seeing her face. And then came the Dubai escalation. A critical enterprise client had threatened to walk. A promised software rollout had failed. And the English-speaking team had scrambled to contain the fallout. But cultural missteps and rushed auto-translations only deepened the tension. By the time the issue landed on Layla's desk, the account was hanging by a thread. Marhaban, Ader, Ona mutafahima gadabikum, she said softly. Hello, I understand your frustration. She didn't rush. She didn't panic. She listened, really listened. And not just to the words, but to what was beneath them. Insult at being misunderstood. Confusion masked as anger. And the sting of feeling like an afterthought in a supposedly global partnership. Layla clarified the technical error, apologized with nuance, and adjusted her phrasing with cultural grace. By the end of the call, the client had not only agreed to stay but asked if they could be routed only to her moving forward. 2 hours later, the client sent a formal letter to the company, translated into both Arabic and English. Your representative, Ms. Layla Mansour, restored our confidence. Without her, we would have ended our partnership. Layla printed a copy and pinned it to the soft wall of her cubicle. That afternoon, she passed two senior managers talking outside the small conference room. One of them, a VP from corporate strategy, held the printed letter in his hand. We really should hire a real Arabic liaison for these accounts, he said. Yeah, maybe through the international office. We can't afford another misfire like this one. Layla stopped in the hallway. Her ears buzzed. A real Arabic liaison. She was the liaison. She had handled the crisis. She had restored the relationship. Her words were on that paper in his hand. But to him, she was still just support staff. Still invisible. She didn't confront them. Not yet. She just turned and walked slowly back to her desk. Each step, heavier than the last. That night, she stayed later than usual, staring at the quiet monitors around her. The others had gone home. The only sound was the distant hum of the servers and the soft whoosh of the cleaning crew down the hall. She read the letter again. It didn't matter to the people upstairs, but it mattered to her. And it mattered to the clients who called her by name carefully, respectfully, correctly. Layla. Not Lila, not the Arabic girl, not a placeholder for someone more palatable. Just Layla. She rolled her chair back, unplugged her headset, and walked toward the elevator. Her reflection stretched across the glass doors. She didn't yet know what would happen next, but something had snapped into clarity. She wouldn't wait to be seen, because soon she wouldn't be invisible. She'd be undeniable. Layla arrived early that morning, her breath visible in the crisp Chicago air as she pushed through the glass doors of Victoria's headquarters. Something felt different. The office buzzed with a strange energy, forced smiles, hurried cleaning, supervisors in ironed suits. Even the normally slumped office plants had been watered. "CEO's coming in today," whispered Sean, the guy from IT, as he passed her desk. "Keller himself." "Big deal." She nodded, sipped her tea, and put on her headset. The buzz grew louder as the hour approached. Raymond Keller, the man whose face appeared only in investor webinars and onboarding videos, was making his first in-person visit in months. People whispered about his tailored suits, his dry charisma, his legendary talent for turning people into metrics. Layla barely looked up. She had 3 active tickets, one from a university in Beirut, another from a medical supplier in Riyadh, and one unresolved voice message from Amman. Real people, real needs. As the elevator chimed and Keller stepped out onto the floor, a small entourage followed him, senior managers, HR reps, and Colleen, walking a step behind him like a loyal shadow. "Let's stick to the main teams," she heard Colleen say. "We can skip the language reps, they're just floor support." Layla didn't flinch. Her eyes stayed on her screen. The group weaved through the rows of cubicles, shaking hands, nodding at buzzwords like client-centric and global. "Pipeline." Layla kept typing, then her phone blinked red. "Misrouted call. Line 6. Jordan, country code." She answered smoothly. "Ahlan, wa sahlan. This is Layla speaking. How may I assist you?" The voice on the other end was panicked. A shipping error had sent crucial tech equipment to the wrong location. The client had tried calling for days. No Arabic rep had picked up until now. Layla spoke calmly, her voice rich with empathy. She pulled up records, resolved the confusion, and even arranged expedited shipping with a time zone adjustment that saved the client to business days. She didn't notice that the group had stopped behind her. Keller, arms folded, watched her without expression. "What language was that?" he asked quietly. "Arabic, I believe," someone muttered. "Do we have an Arabic team?" Colleen shrugged. "Just 1 or 2, not official." Keller nodded, already moving on. Layla hung up, unaware of any of it. She leaned back in her chair, stretched her fingers, and took a deep breath. The crisis was averted. Another voice reassured. Another bridge built. Behind her, the elevator doors closed again. She didn't know it yet, but the man who'd just watched her work would be the one to sign her termination papers. 3 days after the CEO's visit, Layla received a calendar invite titled simply, "HR Mandatory." No subject, no details. Her stomach tightened. She showed up to the small conference room at 10 a.m. sharp. Colleen was already inside, seated beside a stone-faced HR rep with a corporate smile and a closed laptop. "Thanks for coming, Layla," Colleen said, her voice oddly light. "Let's make this quick." They didn't offer her water, or even a seat. The HR rep cleared her throat. "As part of a strategic realignment, the company has identified certain redundancies across non-core support functions. Unfortunately, your position is among those impacted." Redundancy, the word echoed in her skull. "Redundancy," she repeated, her voice calm but trembling underneath. "My position is the only one that handles Arabic-speaking clients. We appreciate your contributions," the HR rep interjected, robotic. "This is not a reflection of your performance." Layla looked to Colleen. Nothing, not even the decency of eye contact. They handed her an envelope, a severance packet, already prepared. 2 weeks' pay. A quiet exit. No room for appeal. "Do I get time to say goodbye?" Layla asked, her voice flat now. "Hollow. We'd prefer a discreet transition," said HR. "You'll have 30 minutes to collect your things." She walked back to her desk in a daze. Her screen was already locked out. Her headset, her life, the walls around her cubicle had been stripped of notes and client printouts, like someone had erased the outline of her existence in advance. Sean from it passed by, pausing when he saw the empty monitor. "Hey, what's going on?" Layla managed a half-smile. "Apparently, I'm redundant." He blinked. "You're kidding." She shook her head and turned to grab the small cardboard box someone had quietly placed on her chair. Not a word from Colleen. Not a thank you email. Not a nod from the directors whose contracts she'd saved. She slid her tea mug inside the box, folded a scarf. The letter from the Dubai client, too. She couldn't leave that behind. Layla, a voice whispered. It was Mia, a junior analyst who'd shadowed her once. She looked pale. I heard from someone. Keller didn't know what you do. He thought you were just a phone rep. Said we didn't need redundancy in domestic support. Layla stared at her. But I'm not domestic support, she said softly. I'm the only Arabic liaison in this building. Mia looked down. No one corrected him. No one spoke up, not Colleen, not HR, not even the VPs who'd seen her in action. She walked out of the building alone. Box in hand, the February wind cutting across her face like glass. The automatic doors closed behind her with a hiss, final, mechanical. Outside, she stood for a long moment, watching her reflection in the glass. She had always tried to believe that her work would speak for itself, that effort mattered. That being excellent, undeniably excellent, would earn its place, but in the end, they hadn't even seen her. She wasn't let go because she wasn't valuable. She was let go because her value had never been recognized. She wasn't just laid off, she was erased. The cardboard box grew heavier in her arms, not from weight, but from all the words she hadn't said. The names she'd translated, the trust she'd earned, the bridges she'd built for people who looked and sounded nothing like Keller. She stepped out into the street, and for the first time, she didn't head home. She walked to the cafe on 7th, where the Wi-Fi was strong, because maybe it was time to start telling her story in her own voice. The cafe on 7th was warm, quiet, and mostly empty on weekday afternoons. Layla sat by the window with her laptop open, staring at the blinking cursor in a blank document. Outside, the snow had begun to fall light at first, then thicker, softening the city's hard edges. Inside, her tea grew cold again. She hadn't told her mother yet. She didn't know how to explain it, how someone could be needed and erased in the same breath, how a person could give everything and still be mistaken for nothing. She applied to a few jobs in the first week, each click a little more hollow than the last. Job titles blurred into one another: customer liaison, client experience specialist, multilingual support agent, all of them vague, transactional. None of them saw her. The spiral came slowly. A heaviness in her chest, a silence she didn't know how to fill. She questioned if she'd imagined it all, her skill, her worth. Maybe she had just been lucky. Maybe they were right to let her go. Then, on a rainy Wednesday, a pinging in her inbox. Subject: from a former client from n.al-saba@hariri, medtech.com. Message: Layla, I just heard you're no longer with Victoria. I wanted to say thank you. You were the only reason I trusted your company. When things got difficult, you treated me like a person, not a number. You understood my words, and, more importantly, what was behind them. That matters. Please don't let them erase you. With respect, Nasser Al-Sabag. Tread it once, then twice. Her hands trembled. Something in her cracked open. She hadn't lost her voice, they had simply chosen not to hear it, and maybe, just maybe, it was time the right people did. She opened a new tab and typed, "Fired for speaking the language my company claimed to value." It started as a blog post. Just 800 words. Not bitter, honest. She shared the facts, the silences, the language Keller never bothered to learn. She talked about the clients, about being seen by the people outside the company, and unseen by the ones inside. She posted it on LinkedIn, then on Medium. Then she closed her laptop and went to sleep. By morning, there were over 5,000 views. By noon, 20,000. The messages poured in, from immigrants, from children of immigrants, from multilingual workers who'd been the bridge and then forgotten. This is my story, too. They never saw me either. Thank you for speaking out. Layla scrolled through the comments, tears rising. For the first time, she wasn't translating someone else's crisis. She was telling her truth, and her voice, calm, deliberate, empathetic, was finally being heard. This time she wasn't on a call. This time, she didn't need a headset. This time, she wasn't speaking for anyone else, she was speaking for herself, and the world was listening. The article reached 250,000 views by the end of the week. Layla barely recognized her inbox. What was once a graveyard of job rejections had transformed into a living archive of solidarity. Subject lines read like testimonies. They silenced me too. Thank you for giving this pain a name. I didn't even know how much I needed to read this. Her words had hit something raw, something wide and unspoken. Journalists reached out, some wanting interviews, others just to say thank you. A reporter from the Chicago Tribune met her over coffee and took careful notes. A civil rights nonprofit reposted her story, calling it a mirror to corporate America's multilingual amnesia. But the most unexpected message came at midnight. No sender name. No subject. Just a sentence. They knew exactly who you were. Below it, a PDF. She hesitated, then opened it. It was a forwarded internal email chain between two senior managers and Colleen. The subject line: Middle East staffing cuts, justification. One line froze her blood. We'll say it's performance-based. But she's the only one. Quiet, replaceable. Keller doesn't know her role anyway. Layla stared at the screen, the words burning into her. They hadn't overlooked her. They had targeted her, not because she failed, but because she succeeded quietly. Because her excellence didn't fit their image of value. She sat back in her chair, every breath heavy. In the morning, she contacted the civil rights nonprofit. They referred her to a lawyer named Samira Qureshi. Calm voice, sharp mind, relentless focus. A daughter of Egyptian immigrants, Samira had built her practice fighting systemic discrimination with surgical precision. You have more than a case, Samira said after their first meeting. You have a pattern. And a platform. They began gathering testimonies. Other Arabic-speaking employees, past and present, came forward, many echoing the same treatment: sidelined, miscredited, silenced. What began as a viral post was becoming a movement. Layla watched the narrative turn. No longer was she just the girl who got fired. She was now the name at the center of a conversation on language, labor, and erasure. One interviewer asked her if she felt angry. I feel seen, she said simply. And I want others to feel that, too. The tables were shifting. The silence was cracking. She had spoken, and others were answering back. And as the case moved toward mediation, Layla prepared for a meeting she never thought she'd face with the man who had fired her, without ever learning her name. The conference room was colder than it needed to be. Steel chairs, a long lacquered table, fluorescent light that flattened every feature. Layla smoothed her blazer, heart thudding steady in her chest. Across from her sat Raymond Keller, CEO of Vectora Solutions. Crisp navy suit. Watch like a mirror. He didn't look up when she entered. He flipped once through the mediation binder, like he was skimming a breakfast menu. To his right sat Vectora's legal counsel. To his left, a silent HR rep she'd never seen before. Layla took her seat beside Samira Qureshi. And composed as always. We're not here for revenge, Samira had said that morning. We're here to hold the silence accountable. The mediator, a neutral third party, opened with process talk. Formalities, tone, confidentiality. Layla barely heard it. Her pulse roared like static in her ears. Then Samira began. We are here to address wrongful termination, she said, evenly, and to demonstrate a systemic bias that led to the erasure of my client's role, value, and humanity. She opened the exhibit packet. We'll begin with these. One by one, she read aloud the letters. Translated emails from clients in Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Egypt. The UAE. Ms. Mansour was the only representative who made us feel understood. She saved our partnership. We trusted your company because of her. Keller shifted. Not defensively, just uncomfortable. Layla could see it in the tightness of his jaw, the subtle flex of his fingers, the way his gaze hovered just above her face, never quite meeting it. We weren't aware she was the sole Arabic speaker, the Vectora lawyer finally said. There was a misunderstanding in internal documentation. Layla spoke then, her voice didn't tremble. It didn't ask permission. No, she said. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a choice. Keller looked at her now. You fired what you didn't understand, she continued. You looked at me and saw someone quiet, replaceable, but I was your voice, your bridge to entire regions of your business. You didn't even ask my name. Silence filled the room, sudden and thick. You speak of global strategy, she added, but you silenced the person actually doing the global work. Samira slid over the last page of evidence, an annotated copy of the internal email calling Layla quiet, replaceable. The room held its breath. Keller cleared his throat. Mistakes were made, he said. We're open to discussing resolution. But Layla wasn't listening to him anymore. She was listening to herself, to the sound of her own words. UNMUTED. 2. The space she now occupied fully. This room, once unreachable, wasn't intimidating now, not because the power had shifted, but because she stood. I'm not here for a job back, she said. I'm here so this doesn't happen to the next Layla. Then she walked out. Not defeated. Not vindictive. Free. 1 year later, Layla stood beneath warm stage lights. No headset, no cubicle, no scripts, just her voice, and an auditorium full of people ready to listen. Behind her, a sleek banner stretched across the screen. Bridgewords, language, equity, power. Her consultancy had started as a simple idea: what if companies didn't just hire diverse teams, but actually understood them? Now it was a growing firm with 4 full-time staff, dozens of clients, and a mission rooted not in slogans, but lived experience. She trained HR departments on inclusive hiring for multilingual talent, helped companies identify where they were losing trust with international partners. She led workshops on cultural fluency, and her favorite mentored immigrant professionals navigating their first jobs in corporate America. Every week, she received messages from people like her, not just Arabic-speaking, not just women, but people who had been seen as less because they weren't loud enough, white enough, familiar enough, and now, here she was, keynote speaker at the Global Inclusion Summit. She looked out at the crowd, students, executives, community leaders, a row of interns scribbling notes in the front row. "They never knew who I was," she said into the mic. "Not really. Not when I solved their problems. Not when I spoke to their clients. Not even when they let me go." She paused, steady, sure. "But I do. I know who I am. And now, so will you." The room rose in applause, not wild, but full, grounded. Layla smiled, not for recognition, not for validation, but because her voice had finally become hers. Not borrowed, not filtered, not erased, just heard, and once heard, she would never be invisible again.